Economics and Global Liberal Studies. My focus for the fellowship was on environmental human rights within Jamaica, particularly for the Maroons, a group of descendants of formerly enslaved West Africans who fled to the mountains and then integrated with the Taino population, or indigenous Taino group of Jamaica. My interest in the environmental human rights of Maroons stems from an interest in the ways in which the bauxite industry affect their ability to access the right to a healthy environment, which is not only a fundamental human right, but also a constitutional right within Jamaica. In an effort to understand Maroon and environmental human rights, I returned to my home country of Jamaica, in which I interned at the Jamaica Environment Trust, also known as JET. JET's presence within the environmental space of Jamaica started in 1991, with their initial focus being on beach cleanups. However, as environmental issues on the island expanded, this focus also expanded, leading to a national campaign such as Not Up Jamaica, which was focused on pollution, and Save Cockpit Country, which is focused on protecting the largest remaining terrestrial forest on Jamaica, or on the island, which is also home to the Compound Maroons, the Maroons group, which I was initially interested in during my research. So from May to August, I was JET's law and advocacy intern, and my work predominantly involved reviewing or writing reviews, critical reviews of environmental impact assessment submitted by hotel and residential area developers, as well as assisting with the creation of a situational analysis report on the circumstance of environmental offenders within Jamaica. The latter of the two tasks was framed around the Escazú Agreement, which is really important to JET's current law and advocacy work, which is a regional agreement within Latin America and the Caribbean focused on three fundamental rights: access to justice, access to information, and public participation within environmental decision-making. And although my interest within Jamaica's environmental space was fairly restricted to the Maroon circumstance prior to arriving at JET, my time there from May to August truly expanded the breadth of my interests. My EIA reviewing made me aware of the destruction of flora and fauna at the hands of residential and hotel developers, which really reduces Jamaica's ability to withstand extreme weather events such as hurricanes. And through this, one central question arises, especially in pertaining to my work of EIA revision submitted by hotel development, which was, can a country that depends heavily on tourism and other service industries be asked to sacrifice its economic growth for environmental conservation, especially in light of arguments that our economic growth is required to finance such conservation? In that vein, I often find myself indecisive on whether or not I believe international human rights frameworks, particularly those regarding the environment, to be a fair standard to hold all countries to equally. Much of the environmental degradation that Jamaica faces now are remnants of our colonial history, positioning Jamaica as only capable of exporting natural resources and providing a background for tourist leisure. In light of this reality, I've often wondered what it means for Jamaicans and other countries within the region, Latin America and the Caribbean, to improve not only the environmental protection laws, but also create a culture of environmental consciousness. So to that, I looked to Dominica, often seen as a haven of environmental protection within the Lesser Antilles of the Caribbean, also within the region generally. And I would attribute much of their success of environmental protection laws to their acknowledgement and integration of the Kalinagos people, the indigenous people of Dominica, within their government. However, in seeing the necessity of having, or the importance of having, indigenous group being integrated within the country in order to expand environmental protection, I must also acknowledge that colonialism did not just export the plundering of land, but also a static view of what constitutes as indigeneity. As stated by Paul Joseph Lopez Oro, a transdisciplinary Black studies scholar in Black Caribs, Garifuna, Maroon Geographies, and Indigenous Blackness, Oro states, Blackness and indigeneity remain codified and ascribed as mutually exclusive racial categories and identities in the Americas. However, as we deepen our historical and contemporary understandings of Black indigenous peoples throughout the Americas, we can begin to dismember the colonial logics of racial compartmentalization and excavate multiple Black indigenous histories, cultures, and politics. And so my interest in expanding definitions of indigeneity affecting environmental protection and law was explored in my independent study paper that I wrote, which used Paulo Freire's theoretical framework within Pedagogy of the Oppressed to discuss and analyze the current nature of Jamaica's bauxite industry and how maroonage can be offered as a model for a better environmental policy. And like looking ahead and wrapping this up, I'm really interested in how the Compact Maroon's recent assertion of sovereignty within 2024, I believe, may influence mining rights, and more broadly, how other maroon groups like Brazil's Quilombolas are shaping resistance in their own countries. Thank you.